Order at this time and ask for a roll call.
Councilmember Abdel-Gawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Circo.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Councilmember Wills Scherzer.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. This evening we have Cub Scout Pack 4111 with us, visiting and observing the meeting this evening, and they're going to start the Pledge of Allegiance for us tonight. So if you would all please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on in the agenda this evening. We have nothing under presentations and awards or personal appearances, so I'll ask for staff reports. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Carteret to make a staff report for Development Services.
Thank you, sir. Two items this evening. First, I always like to start off talking about building projects. Very active first month of the year in January. We're far ahead of where we were this time last year, so it's a very strong start for dwelling unit development in the city. And then several of our larger projects are starting. You may or may not have seen some of these. The Whataburger location, of course, Golden Corral is gone. They've done their utility work, but you get out there today, you actually see some the building foundation and some under slab plumbing going in, so it won't take them long now to get that building going vertical. At the Raymore Commerce Center, the 1 million square foot on lot 3, they have the tilt walls poured. Now they're waiting, they're hoping for the steel delivery in March. They can't put the tilt walls up without the steel structure, so they're waiting on that, but there's still some other things they're doing around the site, storm drainage, some underground utility work as well. The Sunset Plaza, just to the east of City Hall, they've got 43 of the units under construction. They have to complete the private road that provides access to the remaining units. There'll be 67 units in total. And you probably noticed they're doing quite a bit of improvement to the stormwater detention pond for that area along Sunset. So I think when they're done, we'll be pleased with how that looks. And then the venue of the Good Ranch down at Dean Avenue and North Cass Parkway. They pulled their first permits for the first 88 units. There'll be 204 in total. So we'll start seeing foundation work commence on those units this week. So excited to see those projects coming on board, as well as the several other larger projects we have already in the works. Regarding the calendar, we have 2 meetings tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. Our Board of Adjustment will consider a variance. One of the lots in Oak Ridge Farms has irregular angled lot lines, and so one of the duplex units slightly encroaches a setback in that development, so they are requesting a variance to allow that structure. And then at the Planning Commission meeting at 7 o'clock, they'll consider the Brookside 10th plat. It's actually a replat of the common area. This is the land area that council discussed before about when the trailhead parking lot went in on Bristol. There's going to be some land transfers. This plat is actually dividing up the common area space for that to occur. So that'll be coming forward to City Council at the end of the month, along with the deeds that would be transferring those different tracts to the entities that was agreed to. So that's currently what we have on the schedule, and that concludes staff report.
Great, Jim. A lot going on. Anybody have any questions of Mr. Carteret? All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. I would ask the city clerk to make a report.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Each year, the City of Raymore adopts an ordinance establishing procedures to disclose potential conflicts of interest. This ordinance calls for Jim Fearborn as the Chief Administrative Officer and Kim Quaddy as the Chief Purchasing Officer to file financial disclosure statements on an annual basis. The staff report confirms that the proper reports have been filed with the Missouri Ethics Commission by the May 1st deadline. The reports are on file and available for inspection in the office of the city clerk. Also, this evening's packet includes a group of duplicate pages. Pages 178 through 188 are duplicates that are from the previous item. Disregard those pages, please. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Erica. Any questions? Thank you. Mr. Fearmore.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. I would ask, in the absence of Chief Zimmerman, who is feeling under the weather tonight, filling in for her is going to be Captain Wilson to talk to you about the aforementioned change in reporting structure and numbers that we had promised you from last month.
Okay.
Captain Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn, Mayor, Council. So I am not Chief Zimmerman. I always give my disclaimer, you know, this is going to be 2 minutes instead of Jan Zimmerman 5 minutes. So last month, it was brought to your guys' attention about our transition from UCR to NIBRS. And we have made that transition. It's taken several months. However, we're not real comfortable bringing forth comparing our NIBRS numbers to the communities around us. We found that some agency numbers were off by varying degrees in the NIBRS system, as well as some agencies not even entering any information at all. So we're going to go with our numbers and just relay our numbers that we put into NIBRS. So in 2020, our total offenses were 623, which was a 33% increase from 2019. So in 2021, we had 568. Which is about a 10% decrease from 2020. The overall clearance rate was in 2020 was 56.1, which was 350 of those cases, and in 2021 255, which that makes about 45%. Arrest, we were down a little bit with arrests from 20 to 21. In 2020 we had 640. In 2021, we had 621, so it's about 3% decrease. Violent crimes, obviously we've reported on our homicide. We've cleared that, so we're 100% with that. We've had 3 rapes this year reported. 1 is cleared, so that makes that a 33%. However, when I get a little bit further, I'll talk about lab results and whatnot. So I do know that we're about to clear those other 2 remaining. Unfortunately, it won't be in this year. It will be, or last year, it'll be in this year. Robbery, 100%, 3 and 3. Aggravated assaults, we had 8. We cleared 3. There's still some pending. We're at about a 37% clearance rate. And we were at 75% last year. Part of that is because we didn't have a homicide as well. So that pulled our numbers back just a little bit. See, for property crime, 2020 numbers were really hard to find, or 2021 numbers. So we got 2019, and I think 2021 or 2020 is going to be about 17.2% or 14%. I had 2 different numbers I was looking at, and UCR and NIBRS is a nightmare at this point to even work through. So burglaries, we're at about 18%. We had 22 reported, 4 were cleared in 2021. Stealings, we had 39 cleared. We had 184 stealings. So we've cleared 21% of those. Some of those are still pending lab results. Motor vehicle thefts, and there's a little side note for motor vehicle thefts. Everybody sees the blotter. Everybody knows how many vehicle thefts we've been having. This year we've had 24 compared to 28 last year, so we're down 4. We've cleared 1. That's 4%. However, that 1 really is a little bit more. Once we get some lab reports, some chemistry, fingerprints, that sort of stuff coming back from the labs, which takes months, those numbers will go up. So while we're at the auto thefts, I just want to throw out a side note. It is very important that the community remember to lock their doors, take out all their valuables, and lock their garages at night. The officers do come by and tell folks that the garage doors are open. But it's very important to take all that valuable property out of your cars, because people are shaking the doors for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so a few cases that we're kind of proud of this year. I think Chief Zimmerman or Allie May, Lieutenant Delgado May has reported on some of these. The Jewelers Robbery. We had a gentleman go into K Jewelers last year with a gun, asked for jewelry, politely.
Yeah, right.
So that case, we did get a vehicle description. That case was solved with the help of several agencies in the metro. Lee Summit, Leawood, Kansas City, and a gentleman was identified, charged in Cass and Clay County. So we're pretty proud of that one. Freedom Stop robbery, we're proud of this one for two reasons. One is we cleared ours, we cleared Lee Summit's, and we cleared Edgerton County, or Edgerton, Kansas. So the subject went into Freedom Stop. Two suspects displayed guns, demanded money. Nobody was hurt. No money was exchanged. The suspects fled. And with our flock LPR camera system, I think we've reported on this before, we've identified suspect vehicle, was able to identify license and so forth. Both those individuals were charged, and we're anticipating a third person being charged as well. Recently, we had a motor vehicle theft from our city. The vehicle was stolen. Obviously, these folks that come into our community and steal these vehicles, they're involved with stealing from other communities. We got the call that the vehicle was recovered in another jurisdiction. The detective went up and found the vehicle, processed the vehicle. While he was processing the vehicle, recovered $73,000 worth of tools from Raytown that had been stolen. So we're pretty proud of that one as well. Now we'll move on to communications, so bear with me. So this year we had, for 2021, we had 37,075 events. Of those, Raymore had 20,683. Peculiar, we dispatched for Peculiar. They had 7,072. South Metro had 4,342. West Peculiar, 1,261. And other agencies, 3,717. So last year, 2020, we had 35,838. So we went up by about 3% in 2021 overall. Phone calls. So overall calls to dispatch were up comparing 21 to 20 by 1,265 calls. And emergency calls were 266. Emergency calls increased by 561 between 2021 and 2019. So the chief also wanted me to make note of, this really isn't really about the call volume, it's about the time that we spend with each call. So the non-emergency calls that we take, it may last 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then it may last even that longer when an officer takes the call. So it's all about the time, the seriousness of the call, the amount of attention that we put in, and it's hard to calculate that, the amount of attention we have to put to a call. Let's see, same thing is true for non-emergency calls, which consistently hover around 40,000 mark each year. In 2021, we had 999 cases increase, so that was quite significant, almost 1,000. So we had 49,421. Non-emergency calls, we had 39,498, and then emergency was 9,923. So 2020, we had 48,156. Non-emergency calls were 38,499. Emergency calls were 9,656. So about 1,000 increase total. All right, animal control, which I don't know a whole lot about, but I will move on to it. Animal control, we had 220 impounds, or actually 2020 we had impounds of 718. 2021 we had 730, so about 12 increase. So chief has down here 1.6 increase of the total adoption increase from 158 to 222. So that's a pretty significant number, that adoption. It takes a lot of work for these ladies to find people to adopt these animals. All right, so here's, I said I wasn't gonna say this, but this is what the chief wanted, so I'll say it. Everyone thinks it's just puppies and kitties. I feel a little weird saying that. Chief found an interesting note that the number of animals handled by our animal control officers in 2021 were considered wildlife, exotic, and livestock, such as a python, that were actually able to get adopted. I don't know how, I don't know why.
Or why, yeah.
We're thankful for the relationship and organizations with KC Pet Project, obviously, and the Lakeside Nature Center, who takes a lot of the other animals, the wildlife, and some of the exotic, I believe, as well. And I believe that's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Holman?
Very good report, Captain Wilson. Thank you.
This
So-
is Chief Zimmerman's report. I just learned I was going to come up here and do this, so.
Yes, sir. So in addition to the complications of the changeover from the old system to NIBRS, you're complicated by another big factor, and that's the huge change in human behavior we've seen since COVID. A lot of people are working from home, and which means they're either there to be a victim or they're not around when someone could victimize their property. I was just wondering if you had noticed, I know there's no paper way to really capture that, but if the police department had noticed any changes due to that because of, more people being at home or being in the city, and if you could even make any comparisons there.
No, I've not noticed anything, and I can't make any comparisons. I will say this, that once we get further into the NIBRS discussion and we get into the nuances of these little tabs that are throughout the whole thing, I think we're all going to get a better handle on, what those numbers really are. I mean, Lieutenant Abdelgawad, I rely on him heavily to do this NIBRS report for us, and I'm still arguing with him all the time about the difference between UCR and NIBRS. Every time we do something with a case now, we have to go in and we have to validate whether I add a suspect tab or change the suspect date of birth. We have to go back and revalidate that every little thing throughout an investigation, which is really time consuming.
Another caveat I would add to that is every police department of any size makes a similar report year to year on crimes occurred this year versus the previous year, but not every city has the growth rate that we do. So you're dealing with more citizens and more people in town year over year. So if you say we had, for example, a 10% increase in larcenies or theft, how does that compare to the new population versus the time last year? It's one of those nuances that I guess a lot of people don't think about. They may see that number and go, oh my gosh, our numbers went north, but we also have more people living here and more people visiting every year as well.
Well, something that's not listed here, investigative hours for some of these cases. This year, for the last 2 years, we've had COVID. So, if someone gets COVID, they've been off. If they've been on maternity leave, they're going to be off. So some of the investigative hours were dropped as well. So I think that affects the clearance rate. Any other questions?
Thank you. Appreciate it, Captain.
That was almost a Jan Zimmerman 5.
Yeah, it was pretty close. I was going to give you trouble, but I decided not to. All right, Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you,
Anything else?
Captain Wilson. Just want to remind the council that next week is President's Day, so we will not be having a work session. That concludes staff reports this evening, sir.
All right, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Fearborn before we move on? All right, we'll move on to, there's no committee reports. We'll move on to the consent agenda. This evening under the consent agenda, we have 2 items, City Council minutes for January 24th and the approval of the Safety Traffic Enforcement Program, or the STEP program, as approved by previous resolutions. Or are they included in this packet?
They're included, sir.
All right, thank you. So I'd entertain a motion to dispose of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve consent agenda items as noted, City Council minutes for January 24th, 2022, and items B, approval of Safety Traffic Enforcement Program.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to unfinished business. Can I please have the second reading of Bill 3682 by title only, please?
The second reading of Bill 3682 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, directing the city manager to enter into a contract with the Brenton Electric Company for on-call electrical services.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend?
I move that we approve Bill 3682, agreement with Brenton Electric Company for on-call electrical services.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I will second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3682. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Can I please have the second reading of Bill 3683 by title only?
Second reading of Bill 3683 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore amending the Building and Equipment Replacement Fund for the purchase of an on-site server and license.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve Bill 3683, Budget Amendment Building and Equipment Replacement Fund.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3683. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Can I please have the second reading of Bill 3679 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3679 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Section 341.040 of the Raymore City Code of Ordinances.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve Bill 3679, amending City Code Section 341.040, Neighborhood Vehicles.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3679. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3680 by title only?
Second reading of Bill 3680 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Chapter 600 of the Raymore City Code of Ordinances.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve Bill 3680, amending City Code Chapter 600, Alcoholic Beverages.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3680. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. And the last item under old business, could I please have the second reading of Bill 3681 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3681 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, committing the City of Raymore to participate in the Show Me Green sales tax holiday in 2022.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve Bill 3681, 2022 Show Me Green Sales Tax Holiday.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3681. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Okay, now we're going to slow down a little bit here, and we'll move into new business. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3684 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3684 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from M1 Light Industrial District to R3A Multiple Family Residential District, a 9.94 acre tract of land located south of Dawn Street, east of Sunrise Drive, in Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. This item requires a public hearing, so I will open a public hearing at this time, and I'll ask for a staff report.
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Cataret to make staff report for this item.
Thank you, sir. Jake Lovelace with the Griffin Riley Property Group did file an application excuse me, to reclassify the zoning of 9.94 acres. That's located south of Dawn Street and east of Sunrise Drive. And the rezoning would be from its current M1, which is light industrial, to R3A, which is a multifamily residential district. Being a reclassification of zoning, it does require a public hearing advertised for this evening. I want to enter into the record the notices that were sent to all the adjoining property owners, the notice of publication in the Journal, our Unified Development Code, the application submitted, the growth management plan, and the staff report submitted to you this evening. We did hold a good neighbor meeting back on January 12th. We had 8 neighboring residents in attendance at that meeting, and in your staff report, we outlined there were a lot of questions, a lot of good questions from the residents that were there, and indicated what the responses were from either staff or the applicant's team. This property's been zoned M1 since 1979, and in fact, quite a large area was zoned M1 back at that point in time. Subsequent to the industrial zoning, Skyview was rezoned in 1990 to the R3 district that they have, and Morning View was also rezoned in 1990 to the PUD district. So it was taking away pieces of the industrial zoning back at that time and basically shrinking its size, if you would. The applicant at the Good Neighbor meeting and at the Planning Commission meeting this evening is proposing a development of 114 units. They would be multifamily, two-story units, and it would be under common ownership, common maintenance for the entire acreage. The units are spread over mostly 4-unit buildings. I think there is a couple 3-unit buildings on the property. There's also some proposed amenities, which would include a clubhouse, detached garages for the units, and perhaps playground, dog park area, or a sport court. So you can see on the site plan that was submitted, they have some amenity features proposed. They are also required to do some landscape screening along the adjacent property, specifically the Morning View subdivision, which caught the most attention at the Good Neighbor meeting, just trying to get some kind of barrier, if you would, between the new development and the existing development. What's not required, but staff did propose for this rezoning, was a memorandum of understanding, and that's really important in this application. What happens with a standard rezoning application like this is, we have the Good Neighbor meeting, they see the site plan, they see the pictures of the buildings and all of this, and they like it, they support it. Without the MOU, all we have is R3A zoning. So Mr. Lovelace could develop something different or sell it, and whatever fits under R3A is what we would get. The MOU locks us into kind of what you see is what you get. You hear me talk about that with our PUDs. In this case, there's going to be a maximum density for the overall property, which it works out to a maximum of 120 units. He's proposing 114. A little bit of flexibility is given there, just trying to come up with a round number for density. But it also locks into the site plan and some of the amenities and screening that we see. So we felt that was real important with this application and gives a level of comfort to the adjoining neighbors. If the rezoning is approved, they will have to come back for a site plan approval of the development and then a final plat to create the actual development. Engineering Division did submit a memorandum on provision of adequate public facilities. There'll be a minor extension of Dawn Avenue to actually create a cul-de-sac so the public would be able to turn around, and then it would turn into private drives within the development itself. Staff did recommend approval of the rezoning. When we looked at this, we felt that the multifamily use on this tract with multifamily adjacent to it did seem to be the highest and best use for this tract of land, and that the fact that the MOU reduces the allowable density by 50% from what the zoning does, we felt comfortable with this number of units in this location, and felt that the rezoning to the residential would be compatible with the surrounding land uses. Planning Commission on January 18th did vote 7-1 to approve the proposed findings of fact and forward this rezoning request to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. I did include the minutes from that Planning Commission meeting in your packet, as well as the MOU. And this evening, Mr. Lovelace is here, and Matt Tapp with Griffin Riley. The project engineer, Matt Schlicht, is also here, as well as the property owner. So that would conclude staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. Any questions of staff before I invite the developer up? Okay. Mr. Lovelace or Mr. Tapp? Oh, yeah, Mr. Berenson, go ahead.
Sorry, I was a little late getting my hand up there. On the MOU, I know at the Good Neighbor meeting, the residents of Morning View had requested a fence be put up. Is that in the MOU here? Am I not seeing it, or?
The MOU, as I recalled, only talked about a type A screening. So yes, that was a big, there's different types of screening that could be done, just landscaping itself or combination. The neighbors felt very strongly that they wanted an actual privacy fence there. I did not put that directly into the MOU, as I recall.
The folks at Morning View are under the assertion that they're getting a 6-foot vinyl privacy fence.
And if we could ask that of the applicant when they come in. I thought they had said they were going to do that. I would like them to reiterate that for clarification.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Mr. Belwood.
I was just going to share with Mr. Berenson that on page 4 of the MOU under landscape and screening, 6A says the landscape screen may include berms and a privacy fence. It doesn't really lock them into that.
Anyone else from Mr. Carteret? If not, Mr. Lovelace or Mr. Tapp, anyone? Care to join us at the podium, sir?
50 Southeast 30th Street, Lee Summit, Missouri. So as I said, the developer's here, the landowner's here, so if I can't answer anything, they certainly can. But we appreciate the time. We've had a good meeting, we think, with the neighbors, and we think we've found a good solution as far as the layout and the way that it'll work. And in the MOU, we're fine with acknowledging that a berm and a fence will be installed, 6-foot vinyl. That's what we told them at the Planning Commission and at the neighborhood meeting, and we're completely in line with that and fine with that. We want to create good separation and be good neighbors on that side. So in addition to kind of the layout and how that'll all set in there, we're completely fine with that being a stipulation of approval. But otherwise, yeah, we're here for any comments or questions you guys might have. Like I said, we feel like it's a good fit in this location and happy to bring it to Raymore.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Berenson?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Will these properties, will they be all, I understand that they're all going to be under one ownership. They're not planning to make these private owners or?
Yeah, correct. So it'll be one owner that'll own all the units, manage all the units, take care of all the amenities, all the the maintenance of the facilities and the grounds itself. So we feel it's a good use that'll have good control over time. That if, just like we told the people of Morning View, if there was ever anything they needed, they have a person that's on site they can talk to and have a conversation about.
So you'll have a resident there that is
No, but they'll be in
property
that.
manager?
So in that front community office, you'll have an office that's a staffing office for rentals. That'll be there in normal business hours.
Okay.
And then they'll have an opportunity if something happened at the end of the day that they could still have a number to call.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Anyone else? Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just looking at your conceptual designs, and I understand this is a 4-unit building, 2-story. I guess the single photo, is that just a rendering of one portion of the unit?
Yeah, so you should have 2 different renderings that are in there. One that is of the exterior units are more of a 4-plex unit. There are 2 3-plex unit that have more of a front porch appeal to them. So something to try to keep the activities located more towards the front of the facility. The rear will look generally like a rear facility of any house or duplex. It'll have a little patio area, but limited use in that backside. The internal units are a over-under that we call it. And so what you actually see is this would be the elevation view from both sides of it. So as you would come in, you'd have one door that would occupy the lower unit and then a stairwell that would take you to the upper unit side of it. And then they'll actually just be paired with that again. So that would just be mirrored. So basically both sides of it would look the same, I guess, as far as that goes. So the middle units won't have a physical back facade or look, which is kind of why we picked those on the interior side of the project, so that you would have, whether you're on the east side or the west side of it, it has that feel of the front door look. Plus it limits kind of that activity of having too many doors on that one being on one side. But that one will be over and under as far as the units go.
So this is what's being depicted is an in unit, if you will?
So it's,
What is
can we go back to that site plan, Jim, so you can see it?
We're not actually seeing what's cast up
gotcha.
here, so we're looking at the packet.
Yeah. So
it's the
what you
same
do,
one.
Is it the same? Okay.
Yes, sir.
okay. As I say, so if you see the internal kind of there in the middle, those units,
Oh, the lots.
yeah,
Okay,
they're a little
buildings. Gotcha,
different. Yeah,
gotcha.
so the ones in the middle actually have 2 doors on both sides to access the facility.
Okay.
Again, our belief on that one was it didn't ever leave one side to feel like the back side of it. It gave the opportunity to both be middles. And then around the exterior, all those would have that front porch view like we kind of showed that first one so you could see
Okay.
it.
So the center of the plot here are units and not garages or carports?
So the
Coverings.
center of the parking areas where the little squares are that look similar to, I don't even know what you call it, kind of like a storage facility type
Yeah,
piece.
yeah.
Those are the individual garages. So
Okay, all right.
each unit will have its own garage opportunity to rent and then surface space for it as well. So everybody would have indoor space as well as an exterior space.
So they come with some extra amenities as far as storage, external storage in that aspect? Okay,
Correct, yes.
gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
As this is a public hearing, I will open the public hearing is open. I would entertain anyone from the community that would like to address the council at this time on this particular rezoning issue. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. I only see our attorney aggressively going after the developer over there, but seeing no one come forward, I will close the public hearing at this time. And if there are no further questions of staff, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3684, reclassification of zoning Rube property M1 to R3A.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3684. Any further discussion? Yes, Ms. Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to share that I really appreciate staff's foresight in planning that MOU to go along with this. I know sometimes we approve a change in zoning and then something doesn't work with the person who's interested, and so I really think this is smart to be looking out for the future of this property, you know, whether it's this developer who later might change their mind about what they want to put there, or whether it's a different developer for that same property. I think that's great, so kudos to you. And I think that offers great protection to the neighbors in that area. You know, if we have this meeting with them, they think this is what they're getting, and then all of a sudden it turns into something else. I really like that we're protecting that space for the Morning View neighborhood that's right there next door.
And I would add that Mr. Bowie was the no vote on the planning and zoning, and the only thing that he brought forward was that he had a couple of issues with a couple of the findings of fact, but it was pretty vague, but that was the only no vote on the Planning and Zoning Commission at that time for the rezoning. If there's nothing else, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3685 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3685 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving the Sundara first plat.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I will ask Mr. Cataret to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Brad Kemp, representing Clayton Properties Group, did file a final plat application for the Sundara first plat, the first phase of the Sundara subdivision. Sundara, if you recall, is located on the south of Hubach Hill Road and east of Brook Parkway. It is a development that, in the end, would contain 428 lots, so a very large subdivision within the Good Ranch. This phase does cover about 28 acres and would be 109 lots within this phase. I do want to note that Sundara subdivision overall is part of our Hubach Hill North Cass Parkway Community Improvement District that was established to help finance Hubach Hill Road improvements and the like. And so there will be special assessments placed on each lot that is developed within Sundara subdivision. Within the first plat, if you recall back with the preliminary plat, they had 3 different product types that they wanted to present within Sundara. They had the normal, larger standard lots in single-family districts, and they had the smaller, the Clover and Hive style lots as well. So a mixture of all 3, again, product types. The first plat does include all 3 product types. They touch into each one of those distinct areas or neighborhoods of Sundara, if you would. I outlined what the lot size and the lot area requirements are within those phases in the staff report. Of course, these are all detached single-family homes. One of the comments at Good Neighbor meeting did deal with a screening along Hubach Hill Road. So just like you see with the prairie of the Good Ranch to the west, there will be a common area tract along Hubach Hill and Brook Parkway. They will have berming and landscaping within those common areas. So we don't have any lots that actually touch onto the right-of-way line. That's just an important feature for the subdivision. Tract C, which is kind of in the center of the subdivision, is their amenity site with a proposing clubhouse, swimming pool, playground, sports court, and playing field. A requirement through the MOU is that the amenity package be constructed with the first phase. We don't want to get into a scenario like we have in other subdivisions in the past in the city where the improvements are promised but not delivered. They are going to deliver the amenity package with the first home. They're also doing the stormwater quality measures, actually as part of the second plat, but it does tie into the stormwater runoff for this subdivision. There are some stormwater features down towards the floodplain area for BMPs to be installed. Planning Commission submitted their proposed findings on the final plat, and on February 1st, they did vote 9-0 to accept those findings and forward the Sundara first plat to the council with a recommendation of approval. Being a final plat, I included the development agreement that goes along with the subdivision, and want to indicate that the project engineer, Doug Ubin, is here this evening if you have any questions of the applicant. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Would the developer care to address the council at this time?
Phelps Engineering. No presentation, just here to stand for any questions you guys may have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? I guess not. Thank you for being here, though. Any other questions of staff before we move on? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item. Mr. Townsend.
Move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3685, Sundara first plat.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3685. Any further discussion? Ms. Abdelgawad.
I feel like I should apologize for a very similar note, but just wanting to make the point, city staff is incredible. The way a lot of the concerns that came up when we looked at this to begin with had to do with the 3 different product types, and were we going to sell all of one product type first or build out all of one product type, and then the other one, and that's taken care of, and all that's because of coordination with staff and the developer. So I love the note that we're doing all 3 product types. The amenities again is a very big piece. Like you said, Mr. Carteret, we've had subdivisions in the past who've gotten stuck in the middle and we never get those amenities, and so that's something we hear from the community. So I love that that's taken care of too. So to the developer and city staff, it's nice to get this and see that it's all worked out. Thank you.
Ditto. Thank you. Anyone else? If not, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3686 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3686 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving the Sundara second plat.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Yes, sir. I would ask Mr. Carteret to make a staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. Apparently 109 lots isn't enough for a first phase, so they're coming in with the second phase of 66 lots. Again, part of the Sundara subdivision. This phase will only have product types A and B. The product type C was in the first plat up in the northwest corner of the development. This second phase is really down in the southern portion of the subdivision, but it does provide the common area tract as well for the stormwater maintenance features that are part of this development. This final plat was submitted to the Planning Commission. They have submitted their proposed findings of fact, and at their February 1st meeting, they did vote 9-0 to accept the proposed findings and forward the Sundara second plat to City Council with a recommendation of approval. And that would conclude staff report.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Mr. Carteret. Before we see this a second time, would we be able to have like a supplement where you take the overlay of Plat 1 and Plat 2 and put them together so you can see all the units that fit together like a puzzle? I was going to do that today and I didn't have time to print the paper and actually cut it out.
Absolutely, we can do that for the
That'd
packet.
be nice to see the whole vision of the entire thing, even though I don't think it'll affect the outcome one way or the other, but it would be good to see.
We can produce that.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Have any questions of staff? Would the developer care to address this item? Just the second part, right?
Yeah, just the same. I mean, the reason for breaking these out into two plats is just not to have all the eggs in one basket as you go into construction season. And, you know, we get down later in the year, this is biting off quite a bit at one time. So the only reason to break this out into two is if we need to get towards the fall, we need to focus in on one area to get that part of the streets done because it's associated with bonds and closing out, all that kind of stuff. So that's the only reason for breaking this out into two pieces, is just not have all the eggs in one basket, so to say.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Anyone have anything else? If not, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3686, Sundara second plat.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I will second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3686. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3687 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3687 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Section 605.010 of the Raymore City Code of Ordinances.
Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cataract will be making staff report on this agenda item as well.
Thank you, sir. On this request, staff, myself, building official, and the city clerk worked together on preparing this proposed ordinance amendment this evening. What the purpose being that to ensure safe and code-compliant buildings and tenant spaces within the city, we wanted to propose amendment to the process that's utilized for issuance of occupational licenses for our new businesses. The proposed amendment would require a release from both Development Services Director and the building official on a building or tenant space prior to the issuance of an occupational license for a new business. What the release does, it is ensures that the use is allowed in the location that they are trying to go to, the tenant space or location, and that the space to be occupied is in a safe operating condition and compliant with the city code. So when a new business comes in, especially if it's a new business for new construction, it's fairly obvious. We have to do a final inspection on the new building, give a certificate of occupancy, and then they can get the license to occupy the space. On existing facilities, tenants come in. Currently, a lot of the times, staff actually does, and it's voluntarily. The tenant will ask for an inspection. They want to be sure the space they're going into meets code. We offer that. What we're trying to do is formalize that step. If you recall, in our building code, we have a situation where our building official can do, if you would, spot inspections once every 5 years for a site. We basically canvass the entire city for all the businesses. So this proposed amendment has language in it that if they've had that inspection of the tenant space within the previous 5 years, we don't have to do another inspection before it gets occupied. Of course, if that tenant does any work within the space that requires a permit, we're going to be inspecting it anyways. So we feel it's a fairly simple process, but it does ensure our residents, when they go into a business location, that that business is code compliant, that it's safe. The inspections are often done with the fire marshal as well, because they have their specific requirements as well. So we feel this is a good amendment for the residents and for the businesses, and recommend its approval.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Your Honor. So just for clarification, so I understand properly, obviously if I build a new building here, commercial business, I'm going to go through that process because I'm going to need an occupational license before I'm able to open the doors and sell my wares. If I buy an existing building that's been closed down for a while and I'm going to put something in there, same process again. And then the third one we really didn't talk about would be an existing business that does a remodel where they have to pull permits, they're going to do some actual construction, would be the third one, assuming they haven't had that inspection within the 5-year time frame. Is that a correct assessment, sir?
That is correct, sir, yes. We could have the situation where one tenant moves out and the new tenant coming in doesn't make any changes to the unit. That's the one we specifically, especially if that unit hasn't been inspected within the last 5 years, we want to ensure that that unit is a safe space. So we feel like we've covered them all. And For the most part, our businesses are pulling permits because they're doing work anyways within the space, so we have that inspection, as you indicated.
Sounds like a very reasonable request in terms of safety alone, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to piggyback on what Mr. Holman was saying, so it sounds like, if I understood the comments and the conversation correctly, we're pretty much codifying what we've been doing anyway of, inspecting when we're giving the permits and such.
We really are, sir. There'd be a few instances where a tenant did not request the inspection, but that now would be required. But for a lot of our existing tenant spaces, we've been offering that service to go in and inspect, just that level of comfort that it gives them.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So say, for instance, the conversion of Raymore hardware, what requirements were on that particular facility? It's a total rebuild type thing, so that our previous codes would have covered all that, though, right?
Yeah, that's an important example, actually, Your Honor. That building had not been inspected for a period of time, and the tenant that went in there, although still a retail tenant, there are new requirements that do have to be met, and one of them specific for that space was the restroom facilities had to become ADA compliant. A new requirement, but wasn't there when the hardware store opened. So the inspection process in that example did serve the public well in getting that building ADA compliant.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one more time going over this again. So this would prevent a business, say, that goes in, gets inspected, opens, and then for some reason doesn't make it, and then another business comes in and doesn't do any changes, and they don't make it, and a third one comes in years later, and it could be dilapidated by that point, and we wouldn't even be able to look at it without this.
That could be, yeah, that could happen, especially from the building code side of it. The fire district, they do annual inspections, so they may be able to catch something just for the fire code, but they wouldn't have caught an ADA issue or an electrical issue or a plumbing issue. That's not what they look for. So it is an important step for the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions of staff? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend?
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3687, amending City Code Section 605.010, annual license requirement.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I will second the Honorable Councilmember Townsend's motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3687. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3690 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3690 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Play Power LT Farmington, Inc. for construction of the Hawk's Nest, an all-inclusive playground at Hawk Ridge Park.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a staff report after many years of waiting on this particular item.
We're there.
Yeah, I wouldn't lie. I'm pretty excited to be here right now. A little nervous. So before you tonight, we have finally a contract recommendation to build our all-inclusive playground at Hawk Ridge Park. We've spent about 4 years working on this project, and I'm pretty excited. The park board was pretty excited last week. We called a special meeting just to rush it so we can get this thing moving. And so quick summary, we submitted open proposals. We got 5 bids. We submitted to the staff, gave the park board the 3 lowest best qualified bids. They worked through that process, and tonight before you, we are recommending the proposal with Play Power. We do have a representative here tonight just to show his support, and I am happy to answer any questions you guys have on this project.
Thank you. Mr. Burke.
Thank you. Could we have the pictures, the renderings on the screen? Because we have Cub Scouts here, and I know this is the most, you're actually Weeblo Scouts, I apologize. But I know my Scouts, the part they would have been interested in seeing what the pictures of the playground equipment looks like. And you guys will enjoy that, if we could. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
While we're waiting, does anybody have any questions? Yes, Mr. Holman, go ahead.
Mr. Mustine, it's been so long. Would you kind of just give us a short synopsis of this from beginning to end? Because I remember in the early beginnings of this as part of the GeoBond project, we learned the difference between ADA compliant and all-inclusive. Not everybody knows what that means, and a lot of where we got to versus where we thought we were going to be in the beginning is your vision. So if you wouldn't mind, sir.
Well, I'm sure I'm going to screw that part up, but I will do my best. The original project with the 2016 bond just called for a playground, and we just knew that we wanted to do something better than just doing a playground. During that time, we were going to conferences and trainings and learned the difference between what an ADA compliant playground, which is basically what all of them should be anyway. And we wanted to make sure or ensure that we did that. And we met a group of folks who are much more knowledgeable and have the experience through Unlimited Play. And we worked with their team to learn the difference of what an all-inclusive is versus an ADA compliant. And we also learned the expense that's associated with that, but it didn't change the vision of what we wanted to do. We knew it was the right decisions, especially for that park with the Department of Conservation, their amenities all being ADA compliant. The Department of Conservation is very proud of that park because they brag about it being their only ADA compliant park that they are associated with in the state. And then here we do something like this. So the all-inclusiveness its short summary is it hits all 5 senses, all kinds of challenges and physical limitations. It makes sure it takes them all on, from vision, hearing, whatever the case may be. So that's a very rough, uneducated summary, but hopefully that did the job.
Thank you.
And that is the proposal. It's slightly different from what the original was a concept plan that we were just the goal for. This is the final proposal that was selected that met all the requirements, all the specifications that we had laid out for the bidders to provide us. So there you have it.
Mrs. Belgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to add, as well as the vision of this project growing to be all-inclusive, you mentioned the price point has grown as well. And just wanting to take a minute to recognize your work, Melissa's work, and just the contributions from the community that have really helped get us to here. And that's amazing. Will you just speak a little bit to that?
We had a great team, and thank you for bringing that up. I had a fantastic team that I worked with in terms of the fundraising efforts, from Melissa, my own staff with Jimmy Gibbs and Steve. David Gress was an integral part. Matt Tapp was a part of it when we first started. Tells you how long we've been doing this. And just the city staff, the park board, everybody that taking on a fundraising endeavor of that size is no easy task, as I proved. And it takes a long time, as I also proved. But the community really came together when we needed them. We were pretty aggressive in applying for grants and making sure that we never lost track of the vision, even though it did take us a while. So major kudos to my team. I don't take credit for that at all. They did the work. I just kind of made sure they didn't quit.
Yes.
And just one other question, which I know is probably the question of anybody who's watching. When is it going to be done? I know it kind of says that in our packet, not really when it's going to be done, but that's the big question. And just also wanting to express, this is something we're going to be able to be so proud of. I can hardly contain my excitement.
Good. I'm glad you're excited. So the biggest hurdle in terms of completion date is ordering the equipment and delivery time on the equipment. As we know, everything is taking longer than normal. So we did give some extra time within the contract and for substantial completion, which would be when we basically have a grand opening. Upon a second read, if that's what the council chooses to do, and we do a notice to proceed with the contractors, they'll go ahead and place the order and get that done as quickly as we can, and then we'll fill the gap. All those things are in order. But my goal was always to have it completed alongside with the West Hawkridge Park improvements. I'm a little bit ahead of schedule on this one, which is ironic because it's been so far behind for years, but the West Hawkwood Park improvements are now open for bid, so we are actually kind of lining up to get that entire west side completed by the end of the year. And I would love to have a grand opening late summer.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mastini, you might want to mention our primary or specific donor, how particular, how tough it is to get that particular donor to comply to the donation, how important that was. I mean, the city, you and the city really impressed them because, you know, we've talked about that. They just don't give their money or do anything. It's very tough for them. They only pick out specific people they truly believe in. And of course, they believe in Raymore and you.
Yeah. In terms of we applied for several grants, and we actually have one that's still outstanding that may come in. I don't want to bank on that one yet until we know for sure. But the community and we had a lot of donations, Price Chopper, some other foundations that contributed to this. We applied for a Sunderland grant, which is a local company here in the Casey metro area. We applied specifically for our project, and our team, including Unlimited Play, were very integral in, you know, landing that grant. And that was the big one. That was the one that allowed us to just go ahead and move forward. We had to wait on the timeline of the land water, which I'll explain in my next presentation. But Sunderland was a $200,000 donation, and that's the one that sealed the deal that got us here tonight. So.
Excellent. Anyone else? Thank you, sir. No further questions of staff. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I enthusiastically, can I say that right?
Yes.
Move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3690, Play Power Contract Award, Hawks Nest All-Inclusive Playground.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will absolutely second this motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3690. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously 8-0. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3691 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3691 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing an amendment to Park Fund 25 for the Hawks Nest All-Inclusive Playground.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Mr. Mustine will be making a staff report on this, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Back again, as I mentioned in my last presentation, I'd be back to explain some of the finances on this. So I'm here to explain that even though we fundraise, we still have to do a budget amendment. So the Land Water Conservation Fund was very, they had some rules in there that we had to follow. Obviously, we couldn't go out to bid. They had all of these things that we have to have notice to proceed from them for every step. Award of the grant prevented us from moving forward, which was fine at the time because we didn't really have all the funds raised at that point. But they did stall the award or project announcements because of the pandemic. And that's what is why we're here right now, is stalling that for well over a year. Obviously, prices, construction, things increase, and you can't really help all that. As soon as we were given the go-ahead to move forward, we did. But land water conservation, in terms of delaying that, recognized that projects were going to be over budget. And so they put in a process in place to apply for additional funding. And so we did that. I can't contribute that yet because it hasn't been awarded. So, and instead of waiting another 3 or 4 months, maybe, for them, what we did was I worked with Mr. Fearborn, and we come up with the solution to go ahead and find money within the Park Board Fund to fill that gap until that money comes in. And then also, like I mentioned, we have another grant that's still outstanding that may end up supplementing that as well. So how we don't intend to use the entire budget amendment, but we need that money to be in place so that we can move forward. So that is what you see there tonight. and I will announce as soon as I can if the other funding is approved and comes forward. But that is the budget amendment, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Nathan. Yes, Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Does this include any camera systems for the park itself, or is that something we'll add later on?
Camera systems are already in place at the shelter.
Do we have enough to cover all the playground equipment and everything already
Yes,
there?
they should be able to turn them. Right now, we've got them facing where, because where the playground is just an open field, so we have them turned somewhere else. But we also have the ability to add some if needed.
All right,
So
perfect.
we'll work with the IT department once we're installed.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a question maybe more suited for Mr. Icky or Mr. Fearborn. We raised money, Melissa put together the gala event, and so obviously some of the funding of this comes from the foundation. Does that require a transfer that requires any action of this body?
According to Mr. Icky, no.
Fair enough, sir.
I had to check on that one, but because it's already been approved for this particular item, not a random contribution, all the contributions from the gala, the immense contributions that came in from everybody when I got hit in the face with a pie. Anybody else? All of that was dedicated to this particular item, so it does not have to go before the foundation board for further approval.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir. There's no further questions of staff. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3691, budget amendment to Hawks Nest All-Inclusive Playground.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I will second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3691. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3692 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3692 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Blue Cedar Landscape for landscaping services at Centerview.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thanks, sir. This is a project that is associated with the 2020 GEO bond project. The Centerview, if you guys drive by, you'll see a lot of work going on in the back of Centerview. This particular project is to freshen up the building itself, the landscape around the facility, change some of that stuff over to very low maintenance for our maintenance crews, and also to address a couple of safety issues on the east entrance of the facility. We did submit this out for bids. We received one bid that met all the requirements. We've met with the contractor, and we do recommend a contract award in the amount of $47,939.98. And that concludes my report.
All right. Any questions of staff? Thank you, sir. If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3692, award of contract, Blue Cedar Landscaping Incorporated.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3692. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the reading of Resolution 22-08 by title only?
The reading of Resolution 2208 by title only, a resolution of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the schedule of fees.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Ms. Williams to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Before you this evening for your consideration is a resolution to update the schedule of fees. With the neighborhood vehicle permit renewal changing to every 2 years, it's necessary to adjust our fees accordingly to follow that 2 years. State statute allows the city to set our liquor fees to be up to 150% of the state fees. All of the city's liquor fees, except for the late fees, are set at that 150%. We are adjusting to be consistent with all of the liquor license fees. And the water meter supply fee for 3/4-inch meters is adjusted due to the increase in the cost from supplier for a meter pit. That concludes staff report.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Thanks, Lisa. There's nothing further. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item. Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve Resolution 22-08, Schedule of Fees.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I will second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the reading of, approve Resolution 22-08. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously 8-0. Thank you. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3688 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3688 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, appointing Kapkian Willerth LLC as the city attorney and special prosecutor and authorizing the execution of a contract for services.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. Section 310A of the city charter provides that the city shall retain the services of an attorney or law firm to serve as the city attorney. Further, it provides that the city attorney shall be appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of 6 out of 8 members of the city council. At a work session earlier, about 2 months ago, the council expressed its desire to retain the firm's services for another, Kapkian Willer's firm services for another 2-year term, with an expanded role for Mr. Zur to also serve as the city's special prosecutor for unified development cases coming before the city's municipal court. I can tell the council that Mr. Zur has tried to get a little bit of a head start on that because of the complications with the new Missouri Show Me courts. He's been spending quite a bit of time doing his homework actually here in our court area, trying to adjust because that's going to be rushing up upon us with several unified development cases coming before Judge Nigro. That concludes staff report on this agenda item, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Thank you. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3688, Award of Contract, City Attorney.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3688. Any further discussion? Mr. Holman.
Yes, sir. I'd just like to note that Kapkian Willerth has been the city's attorney firm for quite some time, and I think that they've done an exceptional job. I always enjoyed Mr. Willerth's speaking and teaching style, but I have found Mr. Zur to be an invaluable member of our team, and I am glad that they are sticking around for a while.
I would agree. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3689 by title only?
First reading of Bill 3689 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, appointing William N. Marshall III as the city prosecutor and authorizing the execution of a contract for services.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. Section 310B of the charter provides that the city shall have 1 or more prosecuting attorneys appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of 6 out of the 8 of the city council members. The prosecutor serves a 2-year term. At work session earlier, at the same time as the city attorney, the council expressed its desire to retain the services of Mr. Marshall as the city prosecutor for another 2-year term. Staff does recommend. That concludes staff report, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Any comments? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3689, Award of Contract, City Prosecutor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3689. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. That concludes our formal business this evening. We'll now move on to public comments. If anyone from the public would like to address the council at this time, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one come forward, I will move on to the mayor-council communication, and I'll start with Mr. Burke tonight.
Thank you for starting with me, and I have nothing this week. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Probably touch base real quick with, you did a fine job, Captain Wilson, filling in for the chief and getting all of her points across to us. We appreciate that. Mr. Zur, welcome back. Keeping you. We appreciate that. You've done a great job. You do a fantastic job representing us. Mr. Mustine, again, what can we say? You're in the trenches, you and your crew, you're working with the city, you're down there getting this stuff done. You have a vision and you don't let nothing get in your way. No roadblocks for you, whatever it takes in the city. Melissa, the city, we've worked hard over the years to raise money and get this project going. The city, it's going to be a fantastic project, and we appreciate all the work you guys do with the park board, getting this stuff going. We know you're going to jump in there and get this crew working as soon as we get the opportunity to get this done. Again, thank you again to Mr. Marshall, if he's listening. He'll stay on for another 2 years. And happy Valentine's Day to everyone.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wilshizer.
I also wanted to say happy Valentine's Day to everybody. I also wanted to thank the Boy Scouts for attending tonight and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I think that was really nice to see kids being involved here. That was great. Also, thank you to Captain Wilson. He did a wonderful job, and I hope that Chief Zimmerman feels better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We went over a lot tonight. We did quite a few things tonight. We approved, which is probably should have been the first thing so we could celebrate. The first reading of the budget amendment for the budget and the contract awarding for the Hawk's Nest, which has been a long time coming, as has been stated, from community contributions, budget amendments to make that a reality, and hopefully in here this year, barring any shipping and materials problems, we'll be able to actually have a ribbon cutting, which I gave Mr. Furboin some notes on, some ideas. And hopefully we'll see how that comes out. So that'll be pretty cool if that actually becomes a reality. We also added some lots to the community, whether it be single family and different product types there, as well as some multifamily options to kind of give individuals who are not residents of Raymore an opportunity to become a resident of Raymore and enjoy the great things that we have in our community to offer. So that was outstanding to see. It was encouraging as well to see and hear with all the economic development that's occurring in the community with respect to the Whataburger and the Raymore Commerce Center, with the jobs that are coming online in that particular portion of our community, as well as just the host of things and hearing from staff on the different projects and things that are occurring, particularly in our Raymore Police Department and the new reporting, which I believe the blotter, was that new format a result of the new system?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. I figured that was possibly it. And just too many things to enumerate tonight, but I did again want to echo, as we do, it seems to be every week or every city council meeting that we have, and I appreciate what staff does, because as I look at some of the other agendas that I have to review for some of my other capacities I serve in, you guys make it easy. It's truly noted, and as I think Mr. Berenson has said before in his capacity when he deals with other municipalities, it's resonantly evident the professionalism and the care that you take in what you do for this community. And that's appreciated not only from this dais, from everyone in the community that either calls, emails, or visits the front office, from the care that you put in. And it's not just a 9 to 5 that you come into this building and whatever building within the community that you serve and work. You truly care, and we appreciate that. And it is our job here in the council to try to help and make sure to retain you, we train you, and give you all the things necessary for you to continue to do that, because that's what's needed. And if we're not doing that, then that's a problem. That's a problem that I have, and then to try to find ways to make sure that you have everything you need to get that done to the best of your ability. So again, thank you to everybody for making this seem like it's easy. But it's not, because I know it takes not only the directors that are sitting in this room, but those that are behind you, pushing you forward to make it happen. So again, Thank you for my long-winded, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Barber?
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor for a little goodie bag we got today. That'll go to good use. Mr. Carteret, I always enjoy when you start our meeting off with a report like you did tonight. And what it tells me is Raymore is alive and well and growing. And our also, the inventory is going up, even today's meeting. So every aspect with the commercial side and the residential side, it's a good information, and thank you. Kind of on a kind of a linkage, I want to talk about Hawknest Park, and Nathan, great job on that. And that just to watch that whole park evolve is awesome. But I was an original 22 years ago. I bought in Remington, and that area was supposed to be our lake and our swimming pool. So when Councilman Degelwad mentioned MOUs and how important those are in the beginning, we didn't have that. 22 years ago, they didn't do it. And our city's not the same city. It's not run the same like it was 22 years ago. If it was, there would have been a pool there. There would have been a neighborhood lake there. But making lemonade out of lemons, those neighborhoods, that neighborhood now has an amenity that's within walking distance to every house there in Remington. So very few would complain of what has gone on now. So I appreciate the hard work the city's done, transferred something that 22 years ago I could have looked at and said, I didn't get what I wanted, but now I can look at it and say we're getting more than I could even imagine. So I really do appreciate all the work on that. Thank you.
Good job. Mr. Ullman?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would concur with all the comments that have been made to this point. I would also remind everyone, tonight was a great news story night. Mr. Carteret's opening statement and the report from Development Services was just glowing across the board. Residential and commercial growth. Mr. Musteen's report about Hawk Ridge, or the Hawk's Nest finally coming online. And that's what we take it at face value. This is great. This is great news coming into the city. But let's look back where this began. This began with carefully sculpted planning, starting with a strategic plan that was Mr. Feuerborn's vision some years ago that this group put together, and that we are still following the elements of today, and it is paying off. We are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel in many of these projects coming to fruition. From Mr. Carteret's report, this is a return to the days of the late 90s, early 2000s in terms of residential building. We haven't seen anything like that since those days because of the housing downturn, and it's finally come back. We never dreamed, even 10 years ago, that we would have world-class parks like we have already, and the one that we're about to come online with that playground and the additional amenities and improvements we're going to make to Hawk Ridge. Just a few years ago, that was a grass field with a pond in it. It's really, really good stuff, but it comes not simply because of luck or because the stars align, but because of hard work, putting this down on paper. What did we want to pursue? Mr. Feuerborn putting that together in written format for us. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is an exceptional team. An exceptional team, not just the people on this dais, the leaders of the city and all 100 or 100 plus staff members working in unison. That's been going on for some time. We are getting the job done. This is good stuff. We're doing it for the 22,000 people that reside here. Keep that in mind. Have a good evening, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Degelwad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start by thanking my fellow council members for giving me a little grace the last couple of weeks while I was away celebrating my 23rd wedding anniversary with my husband. So apologizing to you all, but appreciating your understanding of our little vacation and missing those two meetings, which I have watched almost all of. They were pretty lengthy on YouTube, but I'll catch up by next week. Secondly, I just was up here kind of worrying that maybe I had hurt Jonathan's feelings by not being quite so excited about his contract as I was about the Hawk's Next piece. So Jonathan, I'm glad you're back, but the playground is more exciting. And just to wrap it up, I concur with what everyone else has said this evening. Lots of great comments. So thanks.
Thank you.
I'll concede my time.
Mr. Berenson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of good comments from my colleagues tonight, so I won't expand on theirs. I will mention quickly, I had the opportunity to speak to Morning View. They had a meeting of their HOA, 2 separate meetings, the previous Monday evening and then the Friday AM before that, for a combined total of maybe 50, 55 people total in the 2 days. And I thought I'd pass along some comments, I wrote this down, some virtual Valentines, if I may, for the city staff. I had a lot of good feedback. And really, the only, I'll start with the negative thing. Sorry, Nathan, it starts with you. The only negative thing I heard was the farmer's market. But I also heard, since I started with you, we had a lady there who walked up to me and said, I just wanted to say that you should tell our Parks Department they do an excellent job. My grandkids play sports here. My other grandkids come from Overland Park to come play in our parks because they like our parks so much here. And then we had somebody the other night mention to my wife at the park that they're also from Overland Park, and they came out here and they said that they thought that the kids and the parents here were more receptive to play, and they just liked the vibe and the feel of our town and our parks. And then the people at Morning View are also very excited about the Hawk's Nest. So a lot of good feedback from the Parks Department. They were very happy with the police department. They haven't had, really, they don't have a whole lot of crime in that area, if I understand that right. They just kind of shrugged their shoulders like, no, we haven't seen anything, and they're a lot of thumbs up there. Public Works, Mr. Crass, I know this last snow event, there was some freeze thaw and there was a lot of ice we couldn't get off the pavement, but the job they did was very good. I drove most of their streets before the last meeting, their first meeting actually, and they did a very good job. And what they couldn't get off because it was ice to the road melted very quickly. So they were very happy with the job that Public Works did. And they feel like they get special care, even though we know everybody in Raymore receives that care. But they think you're taking extra care of them. So we'll leave it at that. Economic development, Mr. Conrad, they were a lot of feedback from the Good Neighbor meeting. There were some people that were, had some concerns about the development, but the overall feeling that I got is that they were very happy that the developer conceded to put up that 6-foot fence. It was very important to them. I'm glad he acknowledged that tonight. But they seemed to think that they had a say in that meeting, and they felt comfortable with that, and I want to thank you for making that happen for them. Ms. Harmer from Communications, I had somebody walk up to me and said that they read the review, and they wish it came out more often, and I know you wish you could publish it more often with the budget you have. They did ask about, are there any other ways to find out what's going on? And of course, I forgot about the text thing that we're doing. I should have mentioned that, but I completely forgot about that. But we're going to follow up with them and make sure they're aware of that. Elisa and Erica, I didn't get any feedback from your departments, but no complaints either, so take that as good news. So again, thank you to everybody, and just wanted to pass along that the residents of Morning View are really happy with your staff, Mr. Fairborn. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, John. I want to thank Cub Scout Pack 4111 for joining us this evening and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. They had some great questions out in the hallway. We did a short tour of the facility, and it's exciting to see young people be interested in actually what goes on in their city government. So also excited about the playground too, Nathan. Excited that they got there. And one of the kudos that gets left out sometimes is the fundraising effort. I know we had some great donors locally, but your team aggressively researched, sought, and were able to obtain some wonderful grants that we wouldn't be here today if not for your extra effort in doing that. So thank you for the hard work getting us to this point. And I know my grandkids are excited about the prospect of the new playground out there. Everybody enjoy your next Monday off. We won't be working with a work session, so enjoy that Monday off. Then the next one will be a regular meeting of the council. And Jonathan, welcome back. I've really grown to respect and admire the sage advice you give this city. We've also grown as personal friends, but I'm excited that you're able to return and provide us with the great work that your firm does, and in particular you. And we appreciate you taking on the extra effort for the codes enforcement, because that has become quite the, with the growing community, something that we're going to have to concentrate on as we move forward. Anyway, that's all I have this evening. Do we have any reason to go to executive session? No executive session. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Townsend?
Real quick, one quick question. I just was going over some notes, and I thought I heard a previous meeting that the community conversation was coming up again this year?
Yeah, I think Mr. Eppert mentioned that in his report at the work session the other night, that July, we're looking at July as a potential.
July or August, and in conjunction with the comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you.
It's feedback on it.
Gotcha. For some reason, I thought it was sooner than I was going to ask if we can get kind of a save the date calendar invite, just so that I can deconflict calendars. That was the only reason for that question. I'm sorry.
No problem. Thank you.
But I move that we adjourn from the regular city council meeting for February the 14th.
Yeah, Valentine's Day. Remember?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you get your wife anything? Shh. Okay.
Nice.
Motion's been made to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second, and you can have mine if it helps out.
That was on
Thank you,
camera
Mr. Holden.
too, wasn't it?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?